Hi again. Okay, everything on pages 169 and 170, I'm sorry, I make that 167 and 168, will tell you everything you need to know in this course about the CAPM, the Capital Asset Pricing Model, okay? So please read that. You've got my slides, you've got my video, and please make sure you study the impact of the beta coefficient, okay? What is the SML? The SML is the security market line, okay? The CAPM, consider it to be an algebraic way of solving for K sub S. The SML is a graphic representation of it, the security market line. Consider that a visual representation, okay? A lot of people think that the SML measures risk. That is not correct, okay? The SML does not measure risk. The security market line measures risk per unit of return, okay? It shows by its slope and its presence on a two-coordinate graph the rate of return that investors require for taking the risk indicated by beta, okay? There's a picture of it. You're going to find this on page 168 of our text, okay? Risk is measured along the x-axis. In this case, it's measured by beta. That's part of Dr. Markowitz's capital asset pricing model. And the required rate of return to induce you to take that level of risk is on the y-axis. Ladies and gentlemen, it's that easy. We know that risk and reward go hand in hand. The SML is the orange-colored line in the middle. Okay? So if you have a risk exactly equal to the market, that's a beta indexed at 1. Okay, look at that green line. That means that the rate of return on the market is 11%. Okay? So once you know that point, now remember the market return rather can change, but right now I've fixed it at 11%. So at 1 beta, the market return is 11%. Now you've got a point on that graph. All right, now 3% is the risk-free rate. That's going to exist no matter what. Okay, so the red horizontal line indicates the rate on a T-bill. So right now, if there is no risk, basically at 0, that means the orange line has its origin at 3%. Now, when you have 2 points at 1 beta and at 0 beta, you know you can draw a straight line. That's the security market line, and that's how I derive that orange line you see right there. Okay? So the two stocks that we looked at, okay, we looked at one with a beta of 1.1. I did it in blue. We know that that's going to return to you a risk-adjusted rate of return of, I think it was 11.8%. All right, you can see that blue line, the dot on the SML puts you, if you go horizontally from there, just about right, okay? We know, on the other hand, that we've got a magenta line there to the left of the green vertical line. That's the beta of the stock that was lower, and I think that was what? It was 0.75, okay? So if we had a beta of 0.75, we know that the risk-adjusted rate of return, as you can see algebraically on page 167, was 9%. So take that pink dot and go horizontally from there. You see that's just about right. So wherever on that security market line, wherever you perceive the beta to be at any one moment in time, that's graphically going to tell you the rate of return you should expect to get to induce you to invest in that stock. Okay? The CAPM does it algebraically. The SML does it graphically. I hope that's helpful to you. Now, there are two things in that security market line that can change. Okay? Now, if you look at the equation, you'll see what they are. We can change inflation. Now, we know that inflation is in the T-bill. Inflation is everywhere. It's going to be in the market as well. So we can expect that both the market return and the risk-free rate of return are going to be affected by a change in inflation. Okay? All right. Secondly, we know that the rate of return on the market, not just by inflation, it can also be affected by other factors. If all of a sudden there's a major geopolitical negative event that's going to make investors a little spooked out about the market, they'll demand a higher return. They perceive more risk. It's not going to change inflation, but it is going to change the market return. So either we're looking at a change in inflation. There's a small number of variables in this equation, friends, right? So either it's a change in inflation that affects the risk-free rate and the market return, or it's a change in the market return based on risk, perception, and that's only going to affect the market return. Okay? So that means that that orange line can change. Okay? All right. So let's go back to our slides for a moment. There I explain. Okay, here are the two things that will change. In the preceding slide, I explained what I just said orally to you. Okay, the SML can shift upward with the slope remaining the same if inflation changes, increases. It can go down if inflation decreases. Okay, but the slope will stay the same. I'll demonstrate this momentarily. All right, or the change in the SML can be starting at the same origin, but the slope can change. The SML can get steeper if there is more risk perceived in the market, or shallower if there's less risk. Okay, so to demonstrate both, let's go back to our original demonstration of the return on the market being equal to 11% and the risk-free rate, the T-bill return, being 3%. Now let's remember, both of those contain inflation, and inflation can change. Okay. Very good. So inflation will alter the location of the SML, but the slope will stay the same because the market return and the risk-free rates return will both be changing by the same amount. So if all of a sudden inflation were to go up by 1%, okay, so that means my 3% becomes 4% for a T-bill, and my 11% for the market becomes 12%. Okay, so let's draw a new SML, and that means I'm going to look at a beta of 1. Okay, so if you math it out here and plug in 4% and 12% and 4% again, you're going to get 12%. Okay, so for a stock with a beta of 1 indexed exactly to the market, we know that 1% is, a beta of 1 is going to result in a K sub S of 1. Okay, let me see if I gave you, no, I guess I didn't. So let me go back to the book. Everything I just told you means, there it is. Okay, the old SML was the orange line. Now the new SML, you can see that I've adjusted at a beta of 1. The market return now becomes 12%. Okay, so since the 3% increases as well, that red line no longer holds true. That's 3%. Because inflation is included in the risk-free rate of return, the T-bill rate, it moves up to 4. That's my new origin. So with those 2 points, I can draw a new line, the purple line in this case, and you can see the slope is the same because my market return and my T-bill return both went up by 1%. They could have come down as well. There's an algebraic proof right underneath. Please understand how that line can change. I will not ask you to draw, obviously, but I want you to be able to prove to me how a change in inflation will alter K sub S. Okay? Case number 2. There will be no change in inflation this time. The origin will remain at 3%. Okay? But now, investors suddenly are either more risk averse or risk tolerant. Risk tolerant would drive our market rate of return down. If you're more risk averse, it drives the rate of return up. So if that happens, if a negative world event happens, then investors demand a higher premium in the market overall for that perceived risk. So now let's assume it moves up 2 points. The T-bill rate stays the same, 3%, but R sub M, the market return, moves from 11%, as we started with, to 13%. Okay, what happens? All right, at a beta of 1, all right, now 13% not 11%, is required. And the origin is at the original 3% that I defined, because perception of risk does not change the T-bill return. We peg that back at 3%. Drawing a line through those 2 points gives us the purple line, the new SML. The origin stays the same at the T-bill rate, but this time the slope steepens because more risk is perceived, and therefore the market return has to be greater to induce you to invest in the market. Okay? That could have gone down just as easily and been below the orange line. Okay? All right. And hold on, please. And it appears that this last slideshow is done. Okay? That brings us to the end of our chapter. Now here's the deal. I am going to record one more video lecture for you. This one will be directed to solving the homework at the end of this chapter. I'm going to ask you to do these problems for me. I've already asked you to do problem number 4. It's a multi-part problem. Hopefully you've gotten through that by now. Let me see. I will also ask you to do, bear with me, number 6, number 7, number 9, and number 10. Okay? 6, 7, 9, and 10, and that will conclude, once I give you the homework solution, that will conclude our work. Okay? Once again, there is some material we have not covered in this course. It's accelerated pace being part of the issue, and that is not troublesome, but if you would like more information on anything at the end of the book, including the calculation of leverage and some capital project evaluation, I'll be happy to provide that after the fact, okay, including some PowerPoints. So let me wrap this up by saying that all of your work has been excellent. Please keep it going. We're less than a week away from completing the course, including our final quiz, which is not, it's not cumulative as far as chapters, but by the very virtue of this course's content, it is cumulative with respect to talents and abilities that you'll use to solve our remaining problems. But you're going to find that the final quiz is not particularly painful. If you did all the work, you can refer back to all of our materials. I'll speak more about that in my final lecture on the homework for Chapter 7. So in the meantime, if you do have any questions, any issues, make sure you get in touch with me. And thanks again, as always, for your kind attention. Good night.